When I was in high school, I had a youth pastor who was incredibly impactful on my life. He was a guy named Alan. He was my youth pastor for about 3 years. And when I was, I think, in my junior year of high school, he decided to resign so that he could go and take over a Christian summer camp in northern Georgia. And before he left, he sat down with me and one of my sisters, and he asked us if we'd be willing to go be a counselor for the summer. And essentially for me, what that meant was 8 weeks of my summer, I would be at this camp. There was a week of training, and then there were 7 weeks of actual camp, if I remember correctly, after that. And the way it would work is you would counsel 1 week, and then the other week you would be off and basically you'd work around the camp, you'd do yard work, you'd work with horses, you'd work in the kitchen and stuff like that, and then you'd counsel, and then you'd work, and then you'd counsel, and you'd do all that stuff. And then the last week of camp, there was a camp week called Teen Week. It was a week where 14 and 16-year-old boys and girls would come and they would, that was just Teen Week. And so I just sort of figured, because I was 16 or 17 years old at the time, that during Teen Week that I would be working around the camp in the kitchen and the grounds and all sort of stuff like that. And about a week before Teen Week, Alan came to me and he said, "Hey, TJ, I want you to consider counseling Teen Week." And I said, okay. And I said, well, look, can I get back with you? And he said, yeah, I need to know soon. And so I left that conversation. And as soon as I left that conversation, a list of reasons why I shouldn't do it started mounting up in my mind. I thought, man, I'm totally unqualified for this. These people are my age. They're probably not going to respect me. I really feel like I should have more training than I have. I'm probably going to mess this up. And fear just started to kind of embed its way into my heart. And the list of reasons why I shouldn't do it kept mounting, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger. But despite all that stuff, I couldn't shake something inside of me that told me I need to say yes. In spite of all the reasons why I shouldn't, I sort of felt like God was nudging me or even urging me to say yes to that invitation. I ended up saying yes to it, but I tell you about my story there because as I look back on my life, there have been countless moments like that for me. Moments when somebody invited me to be a part of something, or moments when I bumped into somebody or some place that had a need, or moments that I became aware of certain realities in our world. And almost as soon as I bump into those things, there's this long list of reasons why I shouldn't do it, why I'm the wrong guy, why I'm unqualified. But still, in the middle of those moments, there's that nagging thing inside of me that oftentimes tells me, in spite of all the reasons why you shouldn't, you should. And I know it's not really because I'm feeling guilty, and I know it's not because of some bad food that I ate the night before. But I've had countless of those moments, countless throughout the course of my life. And I'm guessing you have too. I'm guessing there have been moments for you if in the past, or maybe some of you are having these type of wrestling matches right now, or if you haven't or you're not, you will one day have a moment in your life where somebody invites you into something. They invite you to be a part of solving a problem or part of a solution, or you bump into an issue in our world, or you see somebody or something in need, and you think, man, maybe I should do something about that. But then comes the list of all the reasons why you shouldn't. I think this is a common tug of war that we all face. And what I love about the Bible is that it just addresses life. It talks about the things that you and I face. And so this morning, I want to spend some time looking at God's Word, because the Bible talks about that particular tension. And it talks about what's going on in the middle of it and how we should respond to it. So if you have your Bibles, would you open, or a Bible app on your mobile device, would you turn with me to Mark chapter 6? Mark chapter 6. If you don't have either of those things, don't worry about it. We're going to put all this stuff up on the screens for you so that you can follow along with us this morning. But before I jump into the story in Mark chapter 6, let me give you a little bit of context. The story we're going to look at today is one of those stories that's just really, really familiar. In fact, probably all of you have heard this story before. In fact, as soon as I start telling it, there's going to be some of you go, oh yeah, I know that story. I know how it ends, and here's how it goes. It's just one of those familiar stories. It's a story that's found in all four of our Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And in case you're really not certain what that means, that they're in the Gospels, essentially the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they're in our New Testament, and they're biographies. They're biographies about Jesus' life, what he did, what he said, what he taught, that sort of stuff. And this story is found in all of them. Now, just before the incident that we're going to talk about this morning takes place, there's some interesting thing that happens that I think you need to know about because it'll help you really understand the dynamics of the story and what's going on. Just prior to this incident, Jesus has sent his disciples on a short-term missions trip. He said, okay, look, I want you to pair up. I want you to go out. I want you to do healings, cast out demons, tell people about the kingdom of God. And just before they leave, as they're kind of packing up and getting ready to go, Jesus gives them this interesting additional piece of instructions. He says, look, don't take a lot of surprise with you. In fact, just don't take anything. Just go. So they obediently got up and they went and did what Jesus told them to do. And the missions trip was a wild success. They got out, they started healing and casting out demons and preaching and doing all that sort of stuff. And people just kept gathering. And the longer they did it, the bigger the crowds grew and more people came. And they got going so fast in this missions trip that they literally didn't even have time to eat. And eventually it gets over and they're starting to make their way back to Jesus and they're tired and they're exhausted and they're coming back to Jesus to kind of just go, all right, Jesus, here's what happened, here's what we did and all that sort of stuff. And it's right there where we sort of pick up the story in verse 31. Then because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he, being Jesus, said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So Jesus looks at his weary disciples, exhausted, hungry, and he says, you know what, guys? You need a break. Let's get away for a little while. We need to get some R&R. We need to recoup and we need to recover and all that sort of stuff. So I tell you what, let's just pull away to a quiet place. The next verse reads, so they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. So Jesus finds a boat and him and the disciples load up on it and they start sailing or rowing or however they did it across the Sea of Galilee. The next verse, but many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. So while Jesus and the disciples are loading up in the boat to get a much needed break, there's some people that see what's happening. They recognize Jesus and the disciples and they go, oh, so they literally start running around the lake to meet up with Jesus and his disciples wherever they're headed. Now, as they run, people start to notice people are running and they ask and they go, oh, well, we're going to Jesus, we're following Jesus. And so as they run around the lake, the crowd of people running around the lake gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually, by the time that Jesus and his disciples get to the place that they thought was going to be solitary, kind of alone, rest, relaxation, there's a massive crowd that's standing there. Now we know later, because of later on in the story, that there were at least 5,000 people there that day. We're told there are 5,000 men. We know there was at least one boy there that day. There probably were other children and other women. That crowd could have been as big as 10, maybe 15,000 people. This isn't quite the rest and relaxation, I don't think, that the disciples had in mind. Now, when the disciples get out of the boat and they look at the crowd, and I'm reading a little bit in between the lines here, but I'm guessing as they looked up at the crowd, they didn't quite see the crowd through the same perspective that Jesus did. They probably looked up and they saw frustration and they were angry and maybe even just a little bit resentful. But as Jesus looks up at the crowd, in the next verse we're told, when Jesus landed and saw the crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. So Jesus looks up at this massive crowd. And as he looks at them, the Bible says he has compassion. Now that word, in the Greek is extraordinarily strong. It means that Jesus sort of had this almost visceral response. He felt compassion for them deep in his gut. And we're told he felt that way because as he looked at them, he thought, you know what? They're just like sheep without a shepherd. Now, I'm not a livestock guy. I don't really know a whole lot about livestock. I have 2 cats that I don't like, that I'd like to get rid of. If you're a cat person or a cat lady, after the service, come see me. I got a couple cats I can hook you up with, and I got a dog that He's just annoying, but I don't do livestock or animals, but here's what I do know. Sheep without a shepherd are a pretty pathetic sight. When there's no shepherd around, the sheep are just lost and they're vulnerable. Sheep without a shepherd, I'm told, they don't know when or where to get water. Sheep without a shepherd don't know when or where to eat. They eat things that are bad for them, that can hurt them and all kinds of stuff. Sheep without a shepherd can be attacked. Sheep without a shepherd wander off and do stupid things and get hurt. So Jesus, he looks out at this crowd of people, and when he looks at them, he has compassion because he sees a crowd of people who are tired, who are scared, who are lost and vulnerable. So Jesus decides, we're told in Mark, that he decides to teach. Now, one of the other biographers of this same incident, he tells us that Jesus also healed people. So Jesus walks up to people and he just starts meeting their needs. He sees that they have physical needs and he heals them, but as he does that, he starts talking to them about the kingdom of God. Because as he looks at them, he knows their needs are far deeper than the physical. They also have a soul need. They have a spiritual need that's also not being met too. So he starts to talk to them about a kingdom, the kingdom of God. He tells them about a kingdom where you don't have to be unique or special in any kind of way to be a part of it. He tells them about a kingdom where you don't have to have a lot of money, you don't have to be very smart, you don't have to be talented or outgoing or important in any way. All you have to do to be a part of this kingdom is to simply want it. And that may not sound like refreshing news to you, but to these people, it was salve for their souls. Because they lived in a world that was marked by kingdoms and kings. And every king of every kingdom that they knew about was nothing but a taker. The kings in their day abused people, they took from people, they leveraged people, they manipulated people, and they went and lived life however they wanted. But Jesus, he tells them about a different type of king who's building a different type of kingdom. And this king, he's on the move. And they don't have to be anything special. They don't even have to be good to be a part of it. They just have to want to be a part of it. And there was something inside of these people that healed a little bit when they heard about this. So Jesus, he just sees needs. And he starts meeting them. And you know the crazy thing is, after we talk about everything we're going to talk about today, there's no indication whatsoever that any of these people were grateful. There's no indication that any of them came back and said thank you. None of them wrote a thank you note or, said a nice thing on Jesus' Facebook page about, hey, appreciate the healing and the kind words, Nobody came back and said, wow, you clearly are the Lord. You're the king you were talking about, and gave their life to him. We have no indication that any of that happened. And Jesus doesn't seem to care. Jesus just starts meeting needs, no strings attached. He just starts serving them because they matter. And there's something that they need. Now, while Jesus is looking at this crowd with compassion, the disciples, they see something different altogether. The next verse reads, by this time it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him. This is a remote place, they said, and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. So they both look out of the crowd, Jesus and the disciples. Jesus sees sheep without a shepherd who have needs that need to be met, and the disciples also see a group of people who have needs to be met, but they come to two radically different conclusions. The disciples approach Jesus and they say, hey, so don't know if you've noticed the time, but it's getting kind of late. These people are going to get cranky. I've already seen some hangry people out there, Jesus. We need to go. People need to eat. Disciples look at the crowd and see their needs, and they come to the conclusion, there's a need that needs to be met, but it's not my job to do something about it. That's somebody else's responsibility. The disciples come to the conclusion, man, you know what? These people, they need to start taking responsibility for their own lives. Somebody needs to teach these people, Jesus, that there's no such thing as a free ride or a free lunch. Jesus. I love the way Jesus responds. But he answered them, you give them something to eat. Jesus turns back to the disciples and he says, oh, it's your responsibility. You do something about it. If I were to translate this whole sentence that Jesus says in my words, I'd say, a need noticed is an assignment given. So the disciples are standing there, looking at this massive crowd and the need that God, Jesus, has just told them that it's now their responsibility to do something about. And as they scanned the crowd that day, I'm pretty sure they thought to themselves, okay, this isn't just difficult, okay? This isn't just a difficult assignment. This isn't just a challenging assignment from God. Jesus has literally asked us to do something impossible. This cannot be done. Now, I'm fairly certain most, if not all of us, have stood in a moment just like this. Just like the disciples were right here. A moment when we became aware of a need or something that needed to be done, a problem in the world, or somebody who didn't have something they needed, or whatever it was. Maybe somebody invited us to it. Maybe somebody made us aware of it. Maybe we stumbled across it on our own. And then there was something inside of us that said, man, that's a need. Something should happen. Somebody needs to do something. And we said somebody needs to do something, and the implication was the same as the disciples. Somebody other than me needs to do something. And then no matter what happened, the list of reasons why you shouldn't get involved got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, but still you couldn't shake that thing inside of you where you just felt like God was saying, no, I want you to do something about it. And then you started thinking about the problem and you went, but God, I can't do this. For some of you, maybe it happened around children. You started thinking about children and how when they're young, their faith is important. It gets formed and there's something important. And we got to start paying attention to kids. And the more you thought about it, the more you got stirred up inside and you couldn't shake that thing. And God, somebody needs to do something. And God said, yeah, I want you to serve in the children's ministry at Crossway. And you went, ooh, they're loud. And I don't do kids, and I just don't know. And God's like, yeah, you. Or maybe it happened around teenagers. Maybe you started thinking about teenagers and the world they live in and the pressures that they face nowadays and how stuff comes at them from all kinds of different angles nonstop. And you started thinking about the fact that at a younger age, they're making big adult-sized decisions that set the trajectory of their life. And they're getting terrible advice. I mean, downright terrible advice. And what's even more tragic is they're taking it and it's affecting their lives. And then you started thinking about the fact that they're walking away from God and they're walking away from the church at unprecedented rates, and something inside of you became deeply unsatisfied by that. And you say, God, somebody needs to do something. God goes, yeah, you. I want you to go to the student ministry. I want you to volunteer down there. And you're like, but God, I don't think they're even going to like me. God, I'm not sure if I like me. I don't know, how are they going to like me? Teenagers are scary. They group up and they laugh and talk and stuff, and I don't know what to do with that. Maybe for others of you, it happened in a moment when you bumped into somebody at work or in your neighborhood, maybe in our church, and they had a need. And you went, man, that's terrible. And the more you thought about it, the deeper and deeper it bothered you. And you had your list of reasons why you were the wrong person. And God said, no, I want you to do something about it. Or maybe it happened like it did for me and my wife in the arena of foster care. We started reading these verses in the Bible about how true religion is to take care of orphans and how God's heart is close to the oppressed, and how we're supposed to speak for those who can't speak for themselves and defend those who can't defend themselves. And we started thinking about orphans, and we just started thinking about it. We're like, man, this is terrible. And what are America's orphans? And well, I mean, America's orphans are the kids in foster care. And we started looking at the numbers, and we realized there are more orphans than there are homes. We started thinking about kids who didn't ask for any of this, but they don't have a home. They don't have a people. And we kept going, God, somebody needs to do something about that. And God went, yeah, that's why I told you about it. And we went, we are not those type of people. That's a different type of crazy, and we're not that type of crazy. And God said, why do you think I pointed it out to you? And we couldn't shake it. I'm telling you, we've all stood in the same moment that the disciples are standing in right here, right now. So God tells them, look, you give them something to eat. And then the disciples do what you and I do every time. They go, that would take more than a half year's wages, ! Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? They go, Jesus, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but the logistics on this one are pretty overwhelming, okay? So Andrew did a little math, and he figured out that if we feed everybody here and we do it on the cheap, it's going to take us about a year's wages to feed all these people. And I hate to point this out, but we don't have that kind of money, Jesus. But look, here's the deal. Even if we did have that kind of money, then we got to find a store or a town or somebody like that, or someone who has enough food to feed this size of crowd. And that's very unlikely, Jesus. I don't know if you know that, but like the next near town is kind of small, and they probably are not prepared to feed a crowd this size. But Jesus, even if we had the money, and even if there are people that had the resources, there's a real time issue on this one. Because we're in the wilderness. You decided to take us to a solitary place, Jesus. So now we got to gather the funds. We got to find us some place where we can actually buy that. We got to take the time to actually get there, get all the supplies we need, figure out how to bring them back. Also another problem, Jesus, hate to point it out. And then once we bring them back, we got to find some sort of distribution system for all these people. And the disciples did what we do. They just started making excuses for why they were the wrong people. And they used some of the same excuses we use. God, I don't have a lot of money. God, I'm kind of short on time. Not sure if I've been trained for this. I love Jesus' response. How many loaves do you have? I think that Jesus asks the best questions. Because when Jesus asks this question, he totally knows the answer already. Like he knows he's talking to a group of guys that probably really don't have a lot to offer. I mean, they just came back from a missions trip where he told them, don't take a lot of food. In fact, don't take anything. And the whole reason they're going to the solitary place is because these dudes are hungry. But here's what Jesus does know too. He also knows that if they go looking, they'll find something. And that something will be enough. It's also interesting to me that when Jesus asks this question, he's far more interested in what we do have than what we don't have. We say, well, Jesus, I don't have a lot of time. And Jesus goes, well, that's okay. Just give me the time you have. Well, I don't have a lot of money. Well, that's okay. I don't need a lot of money. I own a cattle on 1,000 hills. You can't I got it all. Don't worry. Just give me what you have. Well, Jesus, I haven't really been trained. I haven't gone to seminary. I'm not sure. I don't know. And Jesus is like, well, can you pray with somebody? Can you read the Bible to somebody? Just give me what you have. Well, Jesus, I'm not really that smart. And Jesus goes, oh, I've known that for a long time. Just give me what you have. Well, Jesus, I'm just scared. And Jesus is like, that's okay. Just give me that. Just give me that. That's all I need. Just give me what you have. You see, Jesus really never asks us for what we don't have. That's not his MO. He just asks us for what we do have. He says, look, if you just give it to me. If you just do what I ask you to do, it'll be enough. It'll be enough. So the disciples, they go looking to see what they actually have. One of the other biographers adds some details that Mark here doesn't add. We know he went and they found a little boy who had a lunch that he had packed, something probably the equivalent of this. And they find the little boy and they discover he has 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes. Barley loaves were the poor man's bread. Barley was gross, barley loaves were gross, and they lacked taste, but he has 5 of them. And we call them loaves in the Bible, but when you do your research, you and I think about loaves as a loaf of bread, but it was really more like a muffin, something about that size. So he has 5 of those and 2 fish. They're small, they're probably sardines, they've probably been pickled, and they're probably there to give a little bit of taste to the bread that has no taste. Needless to say, what the little boy has is fairly unimpressive. But he looks down at it when he's asked for it, and he goes, it's not much, but you can have it. So the disciples take it, and they bring it back to Jesus, and they go, 5 and 2 fish. And again, I'm reading a little bit in between the lines here, but I think they said it with a certain degree of I told you so. See, this is it. Not a lot. Bologna sandwich and chips, Jesus. That's it. 10,000 people. Bologna sandwich and chips. Here. Jesus takes it and goes, that'll do. That'll do. And then he has his disciples seat people in groups. And I'm sure that had to be really strange. The disciples were like, oh my gosh, what is going on? I want to get them out of here. And Jesus said, I'm going to sit them down. I don't know if he noticed, it's sack lunch. So they sit them down and they come back, and in verse 41 we read, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. So Jesus gathers his disciples together, and they're all standing there in front of him, and he goes, all right, guys, let's pray. Thank God for this. And they're going, thank God for what? But they do it. And then he pulls out the stuff, and he starts distributing it to the disciples, and they're all kind of standing there like this, maybe holding their hands out. And Jesus takes the already meager lunch, and he divides it into smaller groups and starts sitting it in their hands. And I wish I could have been inside of the disciples' minds in that moment as they're looking down there thinking, man, this isn't even going to make me full. What is he thinking? I just want to eat. What is he doing? This is going to be really embarrassing. Can't believe this. And then Jesus looks at him and says, all right, start feeding folks. And this is the part I don't want you to miss, okay? Each disciple takes the little bit that they have in their hand, and they just turn to somebody, and they do what they can do with the little bit that they have. And they just feed people. And they discover that when they feed one person, they look down and there's more than they had before. And they keep doing this, and they keep doing this. The rest of the story reads this way. They all ate, and by all, it means the entire crowd. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. So once everybody's been fed, Jesus tells his disciples, and I'm sure their mind is just nothing short of blown right now. They're like, wow, look what Jesus did with that, just that little bit. Jesus goes, okay, I want you to round up the extras. And they're thinking, extras? This is what we started with. But they go round it up, and we're told that they had 12 basketfuls. The word basketful there is in the Greek, it's for a small basket, about the size of a knapsack or one of these cinch sacks that I have. So the disciples go collecting the leftovers. And they just keep bringing them back. And they just keep coming and coming and coming. I wonder if it occurred to the disciples that they started with this and ended with this. You see, there's a powerful, important principle that Jesus is trying to teach in this moment. And it's so important, I wanted to put on the screen for you. And here's what it is. Our little combined with God's lot becomes more than enough. When we take what we actually have to offer, even if it's meager, even if it's unimpressive, and when we sense God's voice telling us to do something, we just bring it to God and use it and do what we can do, then God does what only God can do. Our little combined with God's lot will be more than enough. I think the central question of this entire story is this. Do we want to live our life clutching the meager things that we have to offer? Or do we want to bring them to God and live in the abundance of God? That's the central question of the story. Do we want to cling to our little bit? Or do we want to give our little bit to God and just do what we can do, and then along the way, God does what only God can do? I watch far too many people cling to their unimpressive lunch when they could experience so much more. And I don't know about you, but for me, I'd rather live this way. And I think deep down inside, you would too. When you get past the part where you're scared and you don't want to be inconvenienced and you don't want to and the problem feels big, when you get past that, all of us really want to live like this, don't we? So it's with this in mind that we're going to do something pretty unique on 2 Sundays from now, on November 4th. 2 Sundays from now, we're going to do something that, to the best of my knowledge, as a church family, we have never done before. We're going to call it Serve Sunday. We're going to have one service at 10:30, as Tabby mentioned earlier. We're going to come together for a brief worship service. It's going to be abbreviated, shorter than normal. And then what we're going to do is we're going to break out and we're going to go serve people. As a church family, we're all just going to bring whatever we have to offer. We're going to use it, and God will do what only God can do. After the service, we're going to break out into something called serve teams. There are about 20 different folks or so from our church that have volunteered and agreed to lead serve teams where they've decided to do certain serve projects. There are all kinds of really neat projects that are going to be happening that day. There's a group of people that are going to have an Operation Christmas Child packing party. There's another group of people that are going to go to some nursing homes and sing and play games and talk to a group of people that quite honestly get pushed aside and forgotten. There's going to be another group of people that are going to do free car washes. There's going to be another group of people that are going to do a road cleanup. There's another group of people that are going to do some stuff for first responders. And the list of neat things, we have some things at a school and all kinds of other things that we're going to do. And here's how I'd like you to participate. And I want to be super clear. Here's why I want you to participate. I don't want you to live your life clinging to this when you could experience this. And as a church, I don't want us, as our leader, to spend our collective time clinging to this when we could experience this. So I want to challenge you to sign up for one of those serve projects. There are two very easy ways that you can do it. The first one is to go online. You can go to crossway.news, and when you do, the screen will look like this. And if you look, there's a tab called Serve Sunday. Just find that tab, and when you get there, click on it, and it'll look like this. This is the logo for our series, and then at the very bottom it says, here's some information, then it says Find a Project. Click on Find a Project, and when you do, you'll see a screen that looks something like this. The listing of different Serve projects that you can be a part of on Serve Sunday. At the top, I want you to notice that there's some filters you can use to kind of figure out which ones that you might be interested in. There's one that says difficulty. We have projects all across a spectrum. There's some that are easy, there are some that are medium, and there's some that are hard. And if you're going, man, I want the rugged, difficult stuff, you can filter for hard ones. Or if you're like, man, I have some physical limitations, or I have some other limitations, and I need something that's easy, then just do easy. It doesn't matter what you choose. If all you can do is easy, that's okay. Just bring what you have. Just bring what you have. There's another thing there that says location. There's some of these groups that are going to be happening here at Crossway, some of these projects, and some of them are going to be happening out in our community. So you can decide, man, do I want to stay close to home base, or do I want to go out and be a part of something that's out in our community or something? There's one that says family friendly. Our church is going to be providing childcare for birth through kindergarten on that day. But after kindergarten, beginning in first grade, we want you to serve with your children. And here's why. We believe one of the best parenting moves that you will ever make with your kids in the month of November is to grab your first or second or third year old grader and say, look, we're just going to take the little bit we have to offer God, and we're just going to use it. Watch what Jesus does. Some of those groups are made with your children in mind, and some aren't, so you can filter through that. Also, it says environment there. So you can filter for environment. Some of them are indoors, some are outdoors. We're trying to make this as easy for you as you possibly can. But once you find one that you want, click on it, and you'll see a screen that looks like this. There's a blue button there that says Join This Group. Click the Join This Group, and from there it'll be pretty self-explanatory. If you've ever signed up for a growth group in our church, this whole process is going to be extraordinarily familiar to you. And by the way, if you have kids that you're going to be doing the Serve project with you, you need to sign them up too, like you're doing for yourself. Every person from your family, you need to sign up for the group so we know what to expect. Now, another way you can sign up is to go to the info centers out in the hallway. At the info centers, there'll be some actual people with actual faces and actual voices that you can talk to. They have a listing of their groups. They can answer your questions. And if you're computer illiterate, they can sign you up. But sign up. Don't spend your life clinging to this. I've yet to meet a person who spent their life clinging to this that got to the end and went, yeah, glad I did that. Nobody. So let's just do it, huh? Let's give it a try. Let's just bring the little bit that we have. Use it and see what God can do.